Here marks an end of an era. This is my Dell Precision T5500 dual socket 1366 workstation. As you can see, it is void of its optical drives, its floppy drive, its card reader, and all CPUs and memory and expansion cards have been removed as well. Why did I do this? I just made a video about my plans for the future of this machine, which suited it really well. Well, unfortunately, as time and I guess component fatigue or something of that nature, as all of that goes by, you're bound to get a failure, one that you can't dust yourself off from. And that's what this, unfortunately, had befall it. It was acting erratically under pretty much any operating system that I had on it. This was a weird departure from its otherwise extremely solid stability that I saw from it since I've owned it for 6 years. The time I took it out of service was probably what did it in. It was probably so suited to being in the same place and dusted out in the same place without being moved really for 6 years that maybe, just maybe, something of that nature gave up the ghost. I'm not entirely sure. But when I opened it up to do troubleshooting, I first had the hunch that it might be memory modules because it was locking up, or maybe it was a bum expansion card or something that became seated incorrectly. So I went through it, dusted it out, looked through it thoroughly. I couldn't see a thing wrong. It was still the same configuration, bar a card reader that it was in when it was in service at my desk. Nothing changed. I put it to the other side of my office in the same way it left that part of the desk. Nothing changed. But when I went to reseat some memory modules, and I even went as far as to reseat my CPUs, my dual X5675s that were in here, socket 1366 Westmere CPUs, I made a very, very somber discovery that something smelled hot. And before I could turn it off, and before I could pull the power cable, a couple of the VRMs surrounding CPU 1, which is on the physical board rather than the riser board that held the other CPU, started to smoke. And everyone who is worth a damn with a computer, and everyone who has been familiarized with burning electronic smell knows that that's a smell that usually means a fatality. Putting it under my magnifier showed that there was some scorch marks around the VRMs, and subsequently the machine was dead. Now, I'm confident that my CPUs are fine, my memory is fine, I'm confident that the expansion cards were fine, but it is irrefutable that the machine is not fine. And while somebody could tell me that this machine is still useful and all I need to do is get another board to put in there, that 1366 equipment is getting extraordinarily cheap, I would tend to agree with a couple of things, but there are some caveats. This machine is only useful, in my eyes, in my opinion, if you already own it. If you already own it and you already have it spec'd out to a decent configuration without having to put that much or if any money into it, it is an extremely useful machine. When you have to start doing things such as board swapping, while the boards for these, proprietary in nature, are very, 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 very cheap for the T-Series precisions of this time, you're spending money on a machine that debuted in late 2012. So you really have to prioritize, especially with today's, especially with today's conditions, to have it behoove you to save your money. You have to acknowledge what kind of resource this is going to require. Do you really want to spend any money on a machine that was released in 2012? Is it worth shipping? And how long is that board that was pulled from a unit going to last before it does something similar or has another characteristic fault? It is not worth the gamble for me, for a machine that was already on borrowed time. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my effort. And my time is becoming more valuable as things unfold throughout the year, different projects that I have on the go. The last thing I want to worry about is a geriatric machine. I owned it for 6 years and it did its job flawlessly. I asked it to jump. It said how high. And it did what all it could do for me with the system resources it had available. When I took it out of service, it ended its life with 72 gigabytes of DDR3 ECC 1333, 2 Intel Xeon X5675 6-core 12-thread processors, making 24 threads, 30 megs of cache, and it also had a GTX 1050 in it, which is now currently residing in the machine that succeeded it, which I hope to make a little bit more substantial soon, but that's beside the point. I paid all of $130 shipped for this machine with the riser card for the CPU, which was an option for this machine. It was never a default shipping. It was never a default option. You always had to request it. So the fact that I found one for $130 untested, with free shipping for $130 six or 7 years ago, was nothing short of a miracle. And throughout those 7 years, I've put this thing through flagrant abuse. I have ran innumerable virtual machines on it. I have, pinned the processors multiple times, more times than I care to admit. I have done workstation things with a workstation, and it didn't skip a beat. This is a testament to how well Dell used to make a precision. I've not fully vetted the T7610 that's in its place, but I do know the architecture, and I do know the socket type, and I do know that particular lithography, and I guess with my familiarity with that, I can have a deeper understanding with what the T7610 can offer me and how stable it can be. But it's certainly disheartening to know that the machine that you still had life for never came to fruition. So for an already probably very hard used machine, this thing has seen some shit. This thing had a bunch of asset tags from various businesses. I think it was in a bank at one point. Either that or a school system. Either way, very, very abusive environments. And then a liquidator put it on eBay. I was untested. I bought it. It lived a life on my desk for another 6 years. I would say that I got every penny of my money's worth out of this machine. And that's there's something to be said about that. So this thing lived a hell of a life. Being of a proprietary nature, the memory, the CPUs, and the expansion cards, and the SATA cables, and the optical drives and stuff like that are really the only things that you can keep. Otherwise, unless you have another T5500 or a variant of the T5 series, it's pretty well destined to go to an e-scrap facility, probably in the near future here. You know, things like this happen. I know I'm going to get a comment saying that I'm wasteful, that I'm this, that I'm that, and I should just buy another board to keep the machine running and keep it in service. But again, those boards are still as old as the machine is, because the boards were released when the machine was released, because they needed boards to put in the machines, right? So who's to say that I won't get unlucky with those boards? Who's to say that, those boards will offer me the same stability that the one in here did before it decided to fail? It's not a risk I'm it's not a risk I'm willing to take, and while cost might be low, it's not money I want to spend, and quite frankly, it's power that I don't really want to put into it. It's dual socket 1366. It idles at 170 watts. But that was low at the time. My own server, my T430, my PowerEdge T430, a dual socket Xeon with an array of SAS drives and several virtual machines running on it, several VMs running on it, and a couple containers and some expansion cards. That thing idles at 130, 140. So you can, and that's with a load presented to it. 180 or 175 without a load presented to it is just, why at this point? Obviously, if you can find one for very little money or for free, they'd make a pretty decent workshop machine. Now, if you were, but I would never recommend spending any considerable amount of money on these, because now they're just basically doorstops that weigh about 48 pounds. The build quality is what I will miss the most. But yeah, that's just a little tribute to my T5500. That's no longer with us. No, I will not send you parts. No, I will not, ship you the machine. No, basically anything that you want out of this machine, the answer is probably going to be no. It's assuredly going to be no. So we'll find hopefully a more modest machine to take over the, more legacy things that I want to do. Copy Blu-ray media, have a floppy drive, serial port, multi-card reader, things of that nature. Something that does external, something that has PCI, so I can attach external SCSI to it. We'll find something but I'm not in any rush to. So here's to you, you glorious machine. Lived a hell of a life, but unfortunately, it came to an end at about 6:30 in the morning, February 16th. 2024. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to put this in my little e-waste area and think about all the good service it gave me before I walk away and just let life be what it is. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. As always, this is Fuji signing out.